In general practice, I see something that confuses people all the time. A patient comes in, they eat well, they walk daily, they are not overweight, yet their blood pressure is 150 over 95. They look healthy, but the numbers say otherwise. I'm Dr. Ali. I work in family medicine, also known as the general practice in the NHS, and today I want to explain why healthy people still develop high blood pressure and what's usually happening underneath the surface. Because blood pressure isn't just about salt, it's about physiology. So let's get into it. So it's not just a salt problem. The first misconception is that hypertension is purely caused by eating too much salt. As stated in this research article, salt can raise blood pressure, but in many patients, I see reducing salt alone barely changes the numbers. That's because blood pressure is controlled by blood volume, by arterial stiffness, by kidney signaling, and by hormones. And salt is only one part of that system. If the hormonal drivers are wrong, cutting salt won't fix the problem, which brings me to something I see very frequently in my clinic: insulin resistance, even if you're not diabetic. One of the most common patterns I see is early insulin resistance, and the patient often has normal blood sugars. As in this research article, insulin doesn't just regulate glucose, it tells the kidneys to retain the sodium, and it also activates the sympathetic nervous system. It increases the vascular tone. When insulin is elevated for prolonged periods of time, even mildly, the kidneys will hold onto the salt regardless of the intake. So someone can have a relatively low salt diet and still retain sodium hormonally. That's why I always look at waist circumference, triglycerides, the HDL levels, the HbA1c trends, not just blood pressure in isolation. I start to see the pattern, and that leads into something closely related, which is the visceral fat, even in normal weight. That means the fat around the internal organs, which we call the dangerous or the deep belly fat, stored around the internal organs, not just under your skin. And this Lancet journal states just that. Shocking, right? In clinic, BMI often misleads people. I've had slim patients with rising blood pressure. Even when we look deeper, they carry visceral fat, fat around the liver and organs. Visceral fat releases inflammatory signals. This drives insulin resistance. It stiffens the arteries over time. It is sometimes called the thin outside but fat inside. So someone can look slim externally but internally have metabolic strain. And over time, that strain shows up in blood pressure. Now let's move away from metabolism for a moment and let's talk about something even more underestimated, which is poor sleep, which is one of the most overlooked drivers of blood pressure. As mentioned in this journal, even mild sleep restriction increases the sympathetic nervous system, the cortisol release, and the insulin resistance. I often ask patients with new hypertension that, hey, how many hours do you manage to sleep? And many admit they sleep 4, 5 hours, maybe 6. Chronic sleep deprivation keeps the body in a state of stress. And when the body is in a stressed state, blood pressure stays elevated, even if diet is good. even if exercise is regular, which brings us to a broader topic of stress. Let's talk about stress physiology. Some patients say, I don't feel stress, but physiologically, the body may be under stress. As mentioned in this article, which is from the American College of Cardiology and American Heart Association guidelines, recognize psychosocial stressors are important contributors to hypertension. Chronic low-level stress increases adrenaline, noradrenaline, and cortisol release. This increases the heart rate, the arterial tone. In primary care, I see blood pressure improve significantly when stress management improves, even without weight loss. Now, there is another factor that often gets ignored, which is the arterial stiffness, which increases with age. Basically, your arteries, which actually come out of the heart, they become stiffer. The walls become stiffer. According to this journal from American College of Cardiology, as we get older, the arteries naturally lose some elasticity. They become stiffer. When arteries are stiff, systolic blood pressure rises. I often see this in otherwise fit, active, older adults. It's not always a lifestyle failure, it's structural change. But having good muscle mass, good metabolic health, and consistent physical activity can slow that process down significantly. And this is where everything starts to connect. Normal bloods, but trending wrong. One of the lessons I've learned in general practice is this: single results don't tell the story, trends do. When I see HbA1c slowly rising, triglycerides slowly creeping up, HDL slowly falling, waist measurement expanding, even if everything is still within range, I know something is shifting. Blood pressure rarely rises in isolation. It's usually part of a broader metabolic pattern. If we catch that pattern early, we can change the direction. Why does this matter, you ask? Well, high blood pressure damages the heart, the brain, the kidney, the blood vessels, and it does so silently. Most people feel fine until they don't. That's why early understanding matters. What actually helps, from what I see in practice, is the biggest improvements come from building muscle mass, improving sleep consistency, reducing ultra-processed foods, creating longer gaps between meals, managing stress intentionally, increasing daily movement, not extreme dieting, not drastic restriction, but consistent physiological recalibration. If your blood pressure is high and you're doing everything right, but it doesn't mean you failed. It usually means something deeper is driving it. And that's what we need to identify. In general practice, prevention is about spotting patterns early, not waiting for crisis. If you found this helpful, subscribe. I post simple evidence-based videos on early detection and long-term health from the perspective of a doctor in family medicine. Bye, take care.